Hello everyone, welcome to my Evil Within, Akumu difficulty, no upgrade/keys walkthrough, and this is Chapter 3, Claws of the Horde. And I apologize that it's taking me this long just to get this video out. It's just, I've been feeling under the weather, and I've also been studying for some other things, but I'm back. So I can actually resume progress on this walkthrough. So Chapter 3 is a little bit harder than Chapter 2. Like, Chapter 2 was pretty straightforward, but this one you gotta do a little bit more thinking. Although I will say though, Chapter 3, there's a lot of exploits that allow you to skip a large majority of this chapter. Because there is a big exploit you can do that allows you to kill the sadist very quickly and you will not have to deal with any of the haunted. But I'm not going to use it because I don't like using such exploits in games that I actually like. Unless a section is really poorly designed, I'd never ever use any exploits like that. This section is really well designed, and I will never resort to exploits. So instead, I'm just going to show you the normal way you're supposed to do this chapter. And the first thing you definitely want to do is to burn the 3 haunted. Always get the 1 on the left and then get the 2 on the right. You just have to make sure that you don't accidentally push the bodies. Because while the matches on this game, while they are very good, they have some problems. If the enemies are rising away from you, or you end up accidentally pushing their body out of the match's range, the match will miss. But that's really the only issue with the matches. For the most part, the matches on this game are incredible. The ability to get multi-kills, just the ability to control a lot of the spawns, just the ability to control a lot of the encounters, it really helps out. But we are going to pick up the axe, and we're going to pick up a couple of matches, and we're going to meet up with Marcelo. And for this chapter, we are going to be seeing one of the key differences that Akumu difficulty introduces compared to the other difficulties, and that is the changes to the enemy placements for certain encounters. So, as you'll see here, do you see that guy in the white hood? That is an enemy type that you normally see on Chapter 11 if you're playing on Survivor difficulty or Casual difficulty, but on Nightmare and Akumu difficulty, this enemy type appears in several sections before Chapter 11. And this is one of the sections. And something to note about this enemy type, that enemy type is known as a doppelganger. It's basically a haunted that has the closer synchronization with Ruvik. And he has some unique abilities. His main ability is the ability to summon Laura's hands out of the ground, and they will grab you and instantly kill you. And he also has more health than the standard haunted, but he has some really good design choices to him. If you shoot him in the leg and knock him over while the hands are active, they will go back into the ground. You can freeze this guy and he will die instantly. You can use a torch, you can use an axe, and he will die instantly. There are a lot of different ways of killing doppelgangers without using any ammo, and you can even sneak kill them on Akumu difficulty, but a lot of people assume you can't sneak kill them on Akumu difficulty because they always turn around every time you sneak up behind them. But you can actually sneak kill this enemy if you approach him from around a corner, because the moment you get behind him, a timer starts, and if you don't do the sneak kill within that timer, he'll just turn around and spot you. Oh, by the way, right here, watch these enemies. If they decide to kick down the door, you're fine. If they decide to smash open the door and just break it apart, you've got to restart the checkpoint to stop them from doing that. That door they just opened is very important for a strategy I'm going to use against the sadist. But the only problem with restarting the checkpoint is that when you restart the checkpoint, certain static ammo drops will just despawn. Like, for instance, there are some trap parts you can pick up, and there's also a flashbolt that you can pick up that's just sitting there on the ground. But if you decide to restart the checkpoint, they're gone. I mean, it's not going to affect you too much, but it's always nice to have some additional ammo in case you need it. And I did not have to restart the checkpoint, thankfully, because the enemies did exactly what I wanted them to. And it's the same with these enemies here. These enemies, they're in a preset animation, and during that preset animation, they actually don't respond to you, so you can get behind them and do sneak kills on them. I just choose not to do it because I don't want to be so reliant upon exploits, as I've already explained, and instead I'm going to use that strategy. I just hide around the corner, and if they don't come around the corner and they start going backwards, I wait for both of them to go backwards, I kill the first guy with the axe, and then I pick up the guy's torch after doing the sneak kill. But if they decide to spot me around the corner, I'm going to have to use a torch and an axe. And it's not going to matter too much, although I definitely recommend having a torch for this section coming up. Because there's a section where there's 2 enemies lying on the ground, and you have to use a match on the first enemy, and a torch on the second enemy. Not this part right here, just use a match on this guy. Oh, and by the way, do not try to melee the crates while he's burning. He has a lingering hitbox. If you decide to melee the crates too early, your torch will collide with his hitbox, and you'll lose a torch. So that's why I always wait until he fully burns to death before inspecting these crates over here. I mean, most of the time the crates don't drop anything, but other times they will drop grenades, and you will get grenades in Chapter 3. Although I will say, though, the grenades on this game are nowhere near as good as Resident Evil 4's grenades. The grenades on this game are very underpowered. It takes 2 grenades just to kill enemies, compared to Resident Evil 4's grenades, where the enemies pretty much died in 1 hit from grenades, and you had these different variants of the grenades, but you only have 1 variant, which is just a steel hand grenade. And it's just not that reliable. I mean, I do use it for very specific sections, and it does help out, but I just wish the enemies died from 1 hit with the grenades. Well, of course, I do understand that you can upgrade the grenade capacity, but still, though, you're dealing with a lot of enemies. It's best to have those grenades when necessary, right? But I guess this game didn't really consider that. But this is the part right here. I burned that enemy with a match, and then I used the torch on this guy. You never want to use an axe on an enemy as they're rising up off the ground, because they get invulnerability from the axe while they're rising off the ground. So you'll get moments where you'll lose the axe, but the enemy won't die. And that's why I specifically recommend getting a torch. Now, coming up is going to be the hardest part of Chapter 3. And it's hard because clearing out this house is completely random. It's random what enemies will come after you, and it's random just how it's going to turn out, because the enemies behave very differently sometimes. And here's one of the static ammo drops that I was able to get because of the fact that I didn't restart the checkpoint, but if you restart the checkpoint, you will lose that ammo drop, unfortunately. But it doesn't matter. So, this window will break every single time, and there's either going to be 1 enemy that comes after you, 2 enemies that will come after you, or no enemies whatsoever. On this recording, 1 enemy decides to come towards me. And I decide to experiment with this corner over here to see if he can spot me or not, but I was able to get past his line of sight, and so I'm able to take him out with a sneak kill. And I have conserved my axe, so I can save this axe for later on. And there's going to be a guy to my right, but he's in the preset animation, so I'm going to punish his preset animation by using a sneak kill. And a lot of people wonder why this guy seems to know where you are, but it's all because of the fact that he's in the preset animation whenever you go through that window. See? Even though I stood directly in front of him, he just didn't respond because he's in the preset animation. It's important you make note of this. There are a lot of moments on this game where you can punish preset animations. And then this woman decides to bust through the door. I don't know why this happens. You would expect her to follow the other guy who decided to bust through the door, but she chose to wait a little bit longer before busting through the door. But if she decides to do this, just sneak kill her. If you get it where she's all the way near where you're supposed to use the chainsaw to cut the chain, I recommend going further into the room where I got the shotgun, and then letting her see you through the window, so that she comes through the window, and then you just use the last line position mechanic to your advantage to get away from her, and then you just use a sneak kill to kill her. Simple. Now, for this part right here, I'm going to take out the 2 enemies that are patrolling the road. This guy, I always kill him with the torch, and then I grab his melee weapon, and then I'm going to use his melee weapon to get rid of the doppelganger who's patrolling. And I'm waiting for just the right moment to initiate my strike, and I don't see the doppelganger, so I'm making my move. How I get the doppelganger towards me after killing this first guy is I let him spot me as he's moving near me, and then I hide behind the corner while he's in his animation so that he doesn't immediately go into the animation of summoning Laura's hands. So I'm going to just stand in his line of sight. He spots me, and I'm going to hide around the corner, and he's going to come around the corner, and the moment he spots me, he's either going to do his attack of using Laura's hands, or he's going to try to melee me. If I had decided to get away from him, like I just waited for him to get to that spot over there and then just run away, he would have been more likely to do his summoning move, and I would have just been able to take him out during the animation. But thankfully I was able to initiate my melee attack early so that he didn't have the chance to finish me off with his melee attack. And you might have noticed that while I was doing that, you heard a haunted get alerted to me. That's actually the sniper haunted, and he's going to investigate where I was. But thankfully, he lost me. And he's going to go back to his original spot, and he actually runs. Compared to the other haunted, he actually runs when he's trying to get back to his default position. And this is helpful because it will allow me to set up my strategy a lot faster, and I won't have to wait on him to get back to his default position. Now, there's going to be 1 female haunted up here. I'm just going to take her out with the axe, and then the moment she dies, I'm going to use my shotgun and the last on position mechanic to my advantage in order to get rid of the sniper haunted. You've got to be very careful when it comes to the enemies with the guns on this game. They fire their weapons very quickly, but thankfully, since this game is really well designed, you can get rid of a lot of the gun enemies before they even have a chance to fire their guns at you. Compared to Resident Evil 6's Juavos, I definitely feel like the gun guys on this game are way fairer. They're better designed. There's just too many gunmen in Resident Evil 6, and they stun lock you to death, and then they just drain your life very quickly. And Resident Evil 6 doesn't offer you a lot of opportunities to get the drop on the Juavos before they have a chance to engage with you, compared to this game. Like, I can't even remember any kind of moment where the enemies have actually fired their weapons, and anytime they have fired their weapons, they've always shot at the cover that I'm hiding behind, and I've always been able to get the drop on them. Like, the fact that they give you the ability to get the drop on a lot of these gunmen before they have a chance to shoot you is awesome. And the gunmen, when they do shoot you, they are incredibly fast, and they have hit scan based weaponry, so it's very easy for them to hit you. In fact, I actually discovered in my handgun / consumable only run of The Evil Within that the gun guys can actually damage other enemies, and this is more so apparent with the assault rifle guys in chapter 11. And it's cool that the developers have decided to put this feature in, but it's not going to be helpful for Akumu difficulty whatsoever, because there's barely any section where you can use such a system to your advantage. And placing yourself in just the right position, where the enemies are going to shoot other enemies but not hit you, is very difficult to nail. But at least it's in there, you know? Like, Resident Evil 4 had some friendly fire moments for the enemies. Resident Evil 5 had the same thing. Resident Evil 6 was full of friendly fire moments for the enemies, and it was so cool on that game. And the fact that it's back in this game is just really nice. It just goes to show that Shinji Mikami does not forget a lot of these things. Now, for the rest of Chapter 3, the only thing we gotta do now is just get rid of these 3 Haunted, and then we have to get rid of the Sadist. And it's important you clear out all of these Haunted, because the moment you alert the Sadist, everyone just knows where you are, and they will join the Sadist in attacking you. So you can obviously tell why I have to clear out all of the enemies. I mean, there are some additional enemies that will spawn if you decide to go back into that house where you met Marcelo Jimenez, but I'm just not going to do that, and I will prevent the spawn of enemies. And all I gotta do now is just do a sneak kill on this guy, and I am ready to fight the Sadist. And I'm not going to use any bullets against the Sadist whatsoever. I'm going to use a trap that is inside this building to kill the Sadist, and it's a spike trap. And what a cool idea. This is Shinji Mikami design 101. Although, it does require some very specific systems in play. The first thing is that you need to make sure the door is intact, because the only way this is going to work is if the Sadist keeps kicking down the door. The second thing is that you do not want to damage the Sadist before doing this. For some reason, if you damage the Sadist before doing the method you're going to be seeing me do, he will get knocked back differently when he gets hit by the spike trap. But I've freed the Sadist now, and he's going to break out of the chains. And he's not going to go for you immediately. He has to do this prepping animation every time he gets within a certain distance of you, as you'll see right here. So he pumps his chainsaw 3 times, and then he's going to finally rush you. I'm going to wait a little bit so that he doesn't lose me too quickly. And now is the right time to move inside. And he moves pretty fast, so you gotta make sure you're timing it just right. You have plenty of time to pull the switch. There's a bit of leniency involved with this. Pretty much the moment he breaks down the door, just hit the switch. The speed at which Sebastian pulls down the switch is slow enough that the spikes will be able to trigger the moment he decides to make a run for it. And this is what you need. You need to make sure the Sadist is being knocked backwards. If you decide to damage him before doing this, he will get knocked to his side. And if he gets knocked to his side, you will not be able to do the strategy effectively. And you only have to use the spike trap 5 times before he dies. And you will have not wasted a single bullet on him. I mean, you can use some bullets here and there, because this game does give you back a lot of handgun ammo and shotgun ammo. And he's dead. And there's the checkpoint. And now I'm going to pick up this guy's chainsaw, and I'm going to use it to get out of here. But before I do so, I'm going to scour the area for some ammo. And this will take some time. So I guess I'll go off on a tangent right now. So since this is Chapter 3, I guess it's fitting that I talk about Resident Evil 3 Remake, because some new gameplay got shown for Resident Evil 3 Remake, and it was a lot. And I got to see a lot of the mechanics in play. So I've seen the dodge system for Resident Evil 3 Remake, and it's actually very different to the old dodge system. In fact, I think it's a lot more reliable, and it doesn't feel as inconsistent as the dodge was in Resident Evil 3. Because while the dodge was pretty cool in the original version of Resident Evil 3, it had some problems. Because in the original version of Resident Evil 3, when it came to dodging attacks that weren't grabs, Jill would oftentimes get hit while dodging, because she would oftentimes do multiple dodges for one particular attack, and it was especially problematic against enemies like Nemesis, or against like Drain Demos, or against any other enemy type that utilized an actual melee attack that wasn't a grab. Against zombies, the dodge worked pretty fine, because you just push zombies away. But they've changed the dodge now. So what they've done now with the dodge system for Resident Evil 3 Remake is that when you nail a dodge perfectly by pressing R1 and pushing in a certain direction on the left analog stick, there will actually be a slow motion event that plays, and Jill will do a roll, and thank God it's a roll and not any other animation, and you will be able to hold the aiming button to lock onto an enemy's head. I mean, you still have to aim it, it's not entirely a soft lock, and you will be able to nail some hits in, which is pretty cool. I mean, I wonder how the knife is going to work for that kind of dodging system. And speaking of the knife no longer has a durability system. It will now just be used as a main weapon that you can actually equip to the D-pad. It's no longer going to be a sub-weapon, which I'm really glad. I just think the durability system for the knife was done really poorly. You know, the fact that you could do multiple hits to the enemies caused your knife to degrade very quickly. When you did break your knife fully, you would go into that stupid animation where you couldn't move, so the enemies had a free pass in trying to hit you, which was really dumb. And then the amount of times you get grabbed by the enemies in some really bullcrap ways, and then you're forced to use your knife to break out of their grab, it was really annoying. So, the fact that they're getting rid of the durability system in Resident Evil 3 Remake is a pretty good choice. And on the topic of knifing, Jill knifes differently compared to Claire and Leon. Instead of doing a horizontal slash, Jill does a stab move, and it's not as fast as it was in Resident Evil 5. So I wonder how the stabbing is going to be beneficial to the player, because as I've already mentioned with the horizontal strikes for the knife in Resident Evil 2 Remake, you could get multiple hits in on enemies, and you're able to deal so much damage, and if you had a very high frame rate, you could absolutely decimate enemies with the knife. So the fact that they're taking away that advantage means that knife only is going to be a little bit harder in Resident Evil 3 Remake. Although I suppose what they could do is lower the health on the enemies, because on the original version of Resident Evil 3, the health on the enemies was less than the health on the original version of Resident Evil 2. So maybe they'll do the same thing with Resident Evil 3 Remake, and maybe killing enemies with a knife will actually be possible with that stabbing motion. Based on what I've already listed, it's definitely clear there's a lot to talk about with regards to Resident Evil 3 Remake. But I'm not going to be able to talk about all of them in this video since the video is coming to an end. So I'll talk more about Resident Evil 3 Remake in the later parts. So stay tuned for the future parts. Thank you all for watching, and you take care now.
Take me with you.
Detective Castellanos.
Leslie should be just ahead. It is imperative that we find him.